Welcome to Real Conversations with Patricia Baranovsky-Schneider, the podcast that takes you on a journey around the world to meet some of the most inspiring and accomplished individuals. Discover their stories, uncover invaluable business lessons from their paths to success, and gain exclusive insights on how to apply their strategies to elevate your life and business.
Hello, and welcome to Real Conversations with Patricia. I'm your host, Patty Baranovsky-Schneider. Today I'm joined by Greg Barnsdale, a driven death doula and an author. So welcome, Greg. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you for having me, Patricia. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
My story actually starts with many years ago, about 40 years ago, starting out in the funeral industry. I worked in that industry for about 12 years or so as a licensed funeral director, and then I pivoted and joined the financial planning industry, became a certified financial planner, which I still am today, along with being a funeral director. And I realized in both roles, Patricia, that to a large degree, people did not want to talk about potentially bad things happening in their life. And it frustrated me.
Yeah. It's funny. Well, it's not funny, but I get it. People don't want to talk about it and nobody prepares for it. Like we just went through something similar with my stepfather who died. He was, I want to say 83. And people don't live forever, when you're getting it, but it's not something people plan for until it's too late, which is a shame. And I'm glad that you're advocating for people to start the process early. So I guess we talk a little bit, but why do you think society avoids discussing death despite its inevitability? And how can we shift this mindset to embrace end-of-life planning?
Well, I think the main thing that I have learned, Patricia, since publishing this book a couple of years ago, is that people are open to being inspired. And what I've learned working as a funeral director and then as a certified financial planner, and I'm also a certified executor advisor and a hospice volunteer, death doula, I have learned that this core message, especially I'm finding on LinkedIn, is really resonating with a lot of people. And this is how I explain it. End-of-life planning helps reduce the stress of aging, which is a big issue on its own. But aside from that, it tends to leave survivors more financially and emotionally resilient. It leaves them in a place where they are more likely to get along. It naturally results in more meaningful legacies. It tends to help charities because of the immense tax planning benefits of planned giving. It takes immense pressure off the judicial system from otherwise having to deal with so many unorganized intestate estates. And all these things cumulatively help bolster the economy.
Right. Things that people normally wouldn't even think about. So I get it. Now, from a funeral director to a certified executor advisor and a death doula, how have your various roles shaped your perspective on mortality and the legacy we leave behind?
Yes, it has. Working in the various roles that I have, and also, not that this is in my bio on LinkedIn, but I was also a supervisor with one of the largest mortuaries in Canada. So I've worked in various end-of-life related roles in one way or another. And I can attest to the fact, Patricia, that those people that lean into these conversations with their family and let them know what ultimately they want if they become incapacitated or when they die, and better yet, to properly plan around those objectives, leave their family members in a much better place than avoiding these conversations.
Right. And I guess planning in advance is better than, nothing's worse than someone's, incapacitated or, in a bad way. And then suddenly it's just thrown on you. Well, you have to make decisions. You have to figure this out. It's like, and sometimes you don't 100% know what the person would have wanted until you have these conversations. Now, what are the key benefits of having one's final affairs in order, both for individuals and their loved ones?
Well, the benefits are an awareness. Right. If our family knows what we want, Patricia, when something really serious happens, they can step in with confidence, knowing that they are doing the right things. Instead of being caught up in the emotional turmoil of not knowing what the patient or the deceased wanted. And the time to have these conversations is when minds are clear and when time is plentiful. As I joke about in my book that I published, I joke in the book about the absolute worst time to be talking with someone about these sorts of things is when they're in the hospital. And I jokingly say, can you imagine asking somebody in their hospital bed and they're not doing well, if you don't make it, would you prefer a wood or a metal casket? Well, we don't do that, right? And it doesn't make sense. Nobody would want to do that. But as I said, the time to have these conversations is long before those types of events happen. I recommend Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Yeah, everybody's together at that point. And it is, I think people nowadays are slightly starting to come around. Like I know a couple people that have already planned their funeral. They have the casket already picked out, and that's already paid for because they're saying we don't want to leave that burden to the family. But I'm like, wow, that's glad that you did that because it's stuff I wouldn't have even thought about doing, what kind of flowers you want, whatnot. So, I think people do need to plan it in advance because if that sprung on you, it'd be like, I'm guessing, I hope they're happy,
Exactly. And another thing that a lot of people are unaware of, Patricia, is the fact that the whole funeral industry is changing immensely, and they're having a bit of a challenge trying to stay relevant in our society. That, as one example, people can easily arrange a lot of this information on their phone these days so quickly. But the funeral industry is still to a large degree caught up in the old traditional ways that to quite a number of people these days, they're not seeing the value in traditional funerals as they used to. And the high cremation rate is an example of that.
Yeah, that I see a lot. And now it's even, I've seen so many variations that you can be sprinkled into a tree so you could grow up. It's just crazy. And, but it's a whole new world we're living in now.
Well, it is. And that's why we're better off to know what our options are.
Right.
And with anything in life, right? And you can easily type into your keyboard or on your phone and become almost a Google expert in anything these days. And I'm not suggesting people go to that extent, especially when it comes to our health. But there is so much information available out there, but going to the most effective information that is correct is vitally important.
100%. Now tell us, how did your brain tumor diagnosis change your outlook on life, death, and the message you share with others?
Well, first of all, it scared the crap out of me.
I could imagine.
Because can you imagine this, Patricia? Here I am, I'm working initially in my career, starting out 40 years ago as a funeral director, and then working as a financial planner, and then stressing to people that throughout my whole career, have your affairs in order. It's important. And that whole theme that I stressed to so many people. And then 2 months after I published the darn book, I get diagnosed with a large brain tumor. It was bizarre. And I didn't tell my wife for 3 days.
Wow. I mean, that's kind of a scary thing. I guess it takes you a little while to digest it yourself. I mean,
Well, initially I thought it was cancerous because my general physician wasn't sure.
right.
And he told me that he was awaiting for a call back from the ear, nose, and throat specialist.
Right.
And by the time I got home from that first appointment, my cell phone had gone off with the ear, nose, and throat's doctor's secretary saying, can you come in 2 days? Monday morning at 9 o'clock, the doctor wants to see you. And I thought for sure it was cancerous. I put it on social media and it blew up. My one video has been seen over 1.7 million times.
Wow. Well, there's a story that you definitely don't hear every day, that's for sure. And I'm sure it might not resonate with everyone, but I think just trying to feel what you're feeling at that point resonates with a lot of people.
Well, yeah, and there's a huge gap, Patricia, and that's again what I find frustrating. And that little story that I just told you, it verifies it. And I know TikTok is a younger crowd, I get that.
Right.
But people were so intrigued with my little story about my potential brush with death if this brain tumor was cancerous, and it was non-cancerous. I've had it removed and I feel like I've been shot at and missed, to be honest with it. But on one side, so many people on TikTok were so interested in that little story that went viral. And I don't think my video was that great, to be honest with you. But on the other side of the coin, in both Canada and the US, only about half the adult population has a valid will.
Yeah, a lot of people don't. But again, it's one of those things, like you say, they're going to wait till the last minute because nobody wants to talk about that stuff,
Right. Well, and when I published this book, I put a few questions in the book as examples that people could use
Right.
to get these conversations going at home.
Right.
And by the way, my role right now is just promoting this book. I'm not getting involved in estate planning one-on-one or insurance planning or funeral planning or any of that.
Right.
I just want to spread this message as far and wide as I can.
Right.
But
That makes sense.
it's a universal message. It applies all over the place.
Right. Now, can you explain on the death positive movement and why you believe it's crucial for society to adopt this perspective?
Well, as I had mentioned with those 8 points that I mentioned earlier, Patricia, there are so many benefits to having our affairs properly in order.
Right.
We all want what is best for those that we love. We know at some point we're certainly going to die, and there's a pretty high risk that many of us will become incapacitated at some point.
Right.
I think we're better off to face that reality, build up the courage to have those conversations, and involve our family, to pull out our will and go over it and discuss with our family what we want to have happen. Because those types of open conversations tend to pull families together.
Yeah, because I mean, when it comes out in the end and it's a surprise, it usually pulls people away. So I guess having it together would be, leaving behind, not a family that was torn in half, but bringing a family that came together.
Exactly. And that's why many advisors, many financial planners and lawyers and accountants are recommending that families have a regular meeting to discuss these things, especially if they own a business.
Yeah.
Because we've all heard the stories of things going awry and people not talking, brothers and sisters, and a family business going bankrupt after the death of the patriarch that had started it decades before.
Yeah.
It's all too common, but these types of meetings can help enhance those relationships and improve the chances of families and businesses continuing in a better way.
I agree. Now, you kind of spoke a little bit, but how does proper end-of-life planning contribute to financial and emotional resilience for the surviving family?
Well, one of the things that comes to my mind is life insurance. And I've sold life insurance, Patricia, for quite a number of years. And I do know that there are a fair number of people out there that are not fond of the life insurance topic, but it can be an incredibly valuable tool, especially if it's purchased earlier in age when health is good.
Right.
We spoke about this brain tumor that I had removed out of my head. I still have a little bit of it in there because it's wrapped around a number of nerves and so on. But I'm not eligible to buy insurance anymore at this point until my health track record is clear for quite a long time. But having that, and everybody's situation is different. I'm not saying everybody needs life insurance, but life insurance can be an incredibly valuable tool, a very cost-effective tool. But there's also tax planning benefits that go into all of the aspects of estate planning. And after someone dies, a lot of those planning opportunities die with the deceased.
It's and even with life insurance, I know not that it's something you want to talk about, but like every time we had a brand new grandchild, that's the first thing we did was open up a life insurance policy for them. You never know. And it is beneficial. But I know a couple other people who they had it, but they didn't want to, they felt it was too expensive. There's some out there that are really cheap, but then people don't understand there's all different versions of it, term life insurance, and you have to find what's suitable, because I knew somebody who paid, I don't know, they paid for whatever it was like at 65, if they were still alive, it's no longer in existence. And now they're like, oh my God, but I paid all this money for all these years. But did you read what the policy was about before you ventured into it? Because that family is known to live to like 100 years old. So it's kind of like that probably, you never know, but I mean, you still, but that's where they need the little education.
Well, exactly. And that's why, Patricia, it's so important for all of us to know what our options are and know how the rules work within the jurisdiction where we live.
Right.
And that's why one of the reasons when I created this book, I intentionally wanted to also disclose in there and be transparent that people can set up a will using one of the many online will platforms, especially coming through the pandemic. There were more and more of these will-making platforms available out of necessity to a large degree. But if someone is paying any type of support to a spouse or
Mhm.
child, they should be seeing a lawyer instead. If they own property outside of their home jurisdiction, they should be seeing a lawyer.
Right.
If they have any special if this, then that is to take place type of wishes, they should be seeing a lawyer. If they have a disabled child, they should be seeing a lawyer. So there's a number of cautions with that.
Right. And I definitely agree that people should see a lawyer, because I know a couple people who are up there in age, and they will tell like one sibling, well, if when I go, that this is what I want, make sure that you follow that. Yeah, but now who's to say the other siblings don't? You have to document this somehow. You can't just make a wish and hope, because I can say I'm going to do exactly what you asked of me, but that doesn't mean the siblings aren't going to come, and then a legal battle and ensues, and now what you wanted isn't happening. So I agree 100%. You have to document it, speak to a lawyer, cross your T's, dot
Exactly.
your I's. Yeah.
And in every jurisdiction, the rules are a little different. But that's why the whole concept, this up and coming concept within the death positive movement of families getting together and having these conversations when times are normal
Mhm.
and minds are clear, et cetera, that they can be openly discussed. And
Right.
then there's less chance of estate litigation happening down the road. And estate litigation is very expensive.
Mhm. Now, what advice do you have for people who want to leave behind a meaningful legacy, both financially and emotionally?
I'm sorry, what again was the question, Patricia?
Like, what advice do you have for people that want to leave
Okay.
behind a legacy, both financially and emotionally?
Well, now this is a bit of a biased answer, but I'd suggest they read my book. But and I'm being honest when I say that, Patricia, because the book that I wrote was based on everything that I experienced in both the funeral and the financial planning industry, and it's based on real authentic experiences that I had.
And
It's
you
not
see both
biased.
sides. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not biased by any organization that I
Right.
worked for in the past, but
Right.
it's really just a conversation starter to get people realizing that if they don't have a will, well, these are some of the things that can go wrong.
Right.
If you don't talk to your family about what you want and you just ignore these types of conversations, these are all the problems that could potentially happen in the
Right.
future. And
Right.
I am hearing from a lot of people, Patricia, that it's a great inspiring tool to get people to lean into this and to engage the others out there that are willing to help them, like good financial planners and good
Mhm.
lawyers.
Well, speaking of communication, I was going to ask, how can families and communities start conversations about mortality in a way that feels constructive and compassionate?
Wow, good question. Good for you. It has me thinking, actually, that question has me thinking about a new course that has come out of Germany, and it's called Last Aid. And it's now just being started to get traction here in Canada. And the Canadian Hospice and Palliative Care Association is the organization selected to offer this across Canada.
Mhm.
One of my connections on LinkedIn, a German physician, started Last Aid many years ago, and it's a free course that anyone can take. Over 100,000 Germans have taken it,
Mhm.
and it's a short course taken over 3 or 4 evenings,
Okay.
and there's no cost, and it helps people understand how they can be a better resource to family and friends who are dying. So in essence, it's teaching them to be a death doula, really.
Right. Wow.
But as I said, over 100,000 Germans have taken this course. It's now available in 26 countries.
Wow.
And the Chancellor of Germany, I think her last name is Merkel, if I recall correctly, she has given this physician one of the highest civic awards in Germany because of it.
Wow. Yeah, obviously it's needed, and they found, that's actually really awesome.
It is, yeah. And so they had asked me if I would be interested in facilitating courses in this area where I live near Toronto. And I'm still kind of deciding if I want to get involved in that. It would be right up my alley, but I just find that I'm quite busy marketing this book. But it
Right.
sounds like an awesome program.
Now, you kind of touched on this already, but I guess, what inspired you to write the book, and what key takeaways do you hope readers gain from it?
Well, what inspired me, Patricia, was really frustration after working in both those industries and everything that I experienced. And then going through this whole brain tumor issue,
Right.
it just really confirmed in my mind that I really need to share this message. And I'm so grateful that I had finally figured out the best way to do this was through a book, and it's really starting to get traction.
Mm.
And I guess the key takeaway is for people just to have more of an open mind about these things and be thinking as they go through their lives, what happens if I'm not here tomorrow? What could I be doing to make this easier for my family? And one of the key things that we should all be doing is writing down our login credentials in pencil to make sure that our family is always aware of where they are.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because, well, it's not funny, but I was in an accident at one point, and I was the one who was in charge of everything. You know, I run my own business. My banking, every bill, it was all paid online, blah, blah, blah. And now all of a sudden I'm at a commission. Now my whole family's like, oh my God, like even my computer has a login. So it's like, what do we, even to get in there? It's like, how do we pay that? I don't know her banking. I don't. So that in and of itself is like a huge thing. And people don't, these are things you just don't think about. Like,
Right.
I mean, I'm young, who thought I would have an accident, but, and that's just one of many, I mean, so a lot of people, yeah, I agree 100%. Your login info is like super important, and just your wishes, because it's things that people just don't think about. It won't happen to me. I got another 40 years left. You could get hit by a car tomorrow, God forbid, but you never know,
Well, that's exactly right, Patricia. And that's why I stress to people that, and I've heard this many, many times. Well, I've got time. I don't need the will today. I don't need the life insurance today. I don't need the health insurance today. But I have literally, as a last responder, picked up many, many people at the end of their life in all kinds of situations. Some of them would curl your hair, actually, if I got into the details, which I won't. But what I'm saying is that we all, as I stressed in the book, we all tend to assume, most people, that tomorrow is going to continue just as all the yesterdays have. But I've picked up and seen a lot of people who probably felt the same way.
Yeah. Well, it's, a little crazy. Like, we all try to think like, okay, well, my grandparents lived to be this old, and you all just assume that you got it all figured out. And I could just tell you, like, from my family, the people that have gone, I would have bet $1 billion that they weren't going. You never know. And, 9/11 in the US, I mean, that's a prime example. These people were going to work one day. Who on earth expected that to happen? And there's plenty of freak accidents that just happen in life. So whatever you think, I always say the man upstairs is going to say, yeah, that's what you think. I'm going to show you. You don't know, so you just plan and get yourself prepared. I agree 100%.
Yeah. Well, and we hear of accidents happening all the time. Just recently, those two major aviation accidents.
Yeah, I mean,
But we do tend to think, well, that's not going to happen to me.
Yeah.
I'm fine. I'm going to be here tomorrow, right? And it's just going to happen to somebody else, not me. But I can tell you, Patricia, all the times I've sat down in various funeral home arrangement offices where I've worked as a funeral director, and families coming in thinking, oh my God, I didn't think this was going to happen today, and wringing their hands, some of them fighting and arguing and not talking to each other. And and until you're in that type of situation, seeing it all the time in the funeral industry. And again, that's what's really inspired me to take on this mission, is to share to people and inspire them that they need to be much more serious about this.
Yeah, because you've seen it firsthand. Oh. Now, if someone's hesitant to engage in the end-of-life planning, what do you say to encourage them to take the first steps?
To speak with their family. Because that's really the core issue. If we can have the courage and try and put the fear and the superstition behind us, and just have the courage to speak to our partner and get these conversations going, that often leads to many other things happening. Actually, I was sent a game recently from a woman by the name of Lisa Paul in California, and she came up with a game called the Death Deck. And it's a small little game. I don't have it here. It's out in the living room, but and I haven't played it with my wife yet because she doesn't like talking about these things as much as I do, because this is my wheelhouse, right? But Lisa's done a fantastic job. She's got some excellent questions in there. You pull the card out and read it with whoever you're playing with, and try and guess what the other person's going to say. But again, I haven't played it yet, but I'm so looking forward to it.
But that's a good way to basically highlight, you have no idea what these people actually want. Now is the time to do this. So I think that's
Yes.
a clever way. Oh, you should have that to everybody that you're selling the book to. If you don't think you need this, play this game first.
Well, and who knows, I might end up doing some collaborating or a webinar with Lisa. But
Yeah.
one of the things that I have done, Patricia, that I want to make sure I get this in, because you had brought up the question earlier and I don't think I answered it. In my book, I include a very few questions to help people get these conversations going with family, because I've seen situations where my financial planning clients, based on our conversation in the office, have gone home with the intention of speaking with their family and been shot down, saying, "Oh, mom, dad, you're going to be fine. We don't want to talk about it." And I have since come up with a list of questions that over my career I have found to be most effective. And I've broken them down as 15 very basic questions for initial conversations and 15 more advanced questions for more advanced conversations. And they're available for free on my website, just the same as I've come up with a very short quiz to help inspire people to realize that they probably don't have their affairs quite in order the way they should be, and they should be paying attention to this.
Yeah. It's one of those things that most people, even if they think they have it all, it's not until the time comes that you realize, oh my God, I didn't have this. I didn't have that. I needed that. I mean, I've witnessed it so many times on my end, and we're not talking hundreds of thousands like you probably witnessed, but I don't think anybody's ever left and everything was just totally perfect. There's always something you're missing.
Yeah, well, I agree. I agree that the percentage of people that I have seen who truly have their final affairs totally in order is very, very small.
Yeah. Oh. So now, anything else you want to add that we didn't talk about, and how can people get your book and all that good stuff?
Yes. My wife has a cricket machine, so we came up with these conversation coasters, and I have two on the one side for all the procrastinators because of all these procrastinators that I bumped into over the years, Patricia, who have said to me, "Greg, I'll set up the life insurance when I get around to it. I'll do this when I get around. I'm not ready yet, or I have to wait
get around to it."
That's right. So that's why I've come up with, and financial advisors are buying these. It's got my logo on the other side, but financial advisors especially are buying these as they are with the books from me at a discount with bulk purchases, and they're using the coasters to incentivize their clients when they get some pushback like that.
Nice. Now, how can people get a hold of you or learn more about you and your services?
Yeah, well, the best way is through my website, donotIgnoreYourMortality.com. And there's free resources on there, the quiz, the probing legacy questions, and my email and all my contact information is there too.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for being on the show. Again, that was Greg Barnsdale. So thanks for listening to Real Conversations with Patricia. Never miss an episode by subscribing to the channel. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Real Conversations with Patricia, talking with some of the most brilliant minds on their journey to success and their recommended strategies. Please leave your feedback and visit pristineadvisors.com to get the latest and greatest business advisement on the planet. Feel free to let me know your thoughts, suggestions, and anything else you'd like me to cover. Together, we can make success happen for all.